Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, y'all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought, of course, that I would give my final fight preview, my final fight breakdown, and my final fight prediction of the very great matchup that is going to be happening next week. And there is a multitude of great fights that are going to be happening next week. One, of course, is between that of Terrence Bud Crawford and Errol Spence Jr., which I believe is going to be happening on July 29th, next Saturday. And on that same day, you're also going to have UFC 291. I'm also going to be doing a card prediction on that, at least on the two main events, the co-main event and the real main event. And then, of course, you have this grand fight, which might potentially be the best matchup of the year, just in terms of what both fighters bring to the table and in terms of truly meeting their true counterpart. And of course, for those of you that don't know which fight that I'm talking about the Naoya Inoue, the Japanese monster, versus that of Stephen Coolboy Fulton, versus that of the unified champion, I believe, at least the somewhat unified champion, I believe, at 126 pounds. For those of you that have seen my videos in the past about sports, you also know that if you've listened to my videos long enough that I'm a little bit of a movie fanatic, that I like to watch a lot of movies. Well, one of my favorite movies of all time is that of The Dark Knight that was released in that of 2008. And the reason why I compare it to this is because that movie was so great in my view, not just because of the acting and a lot of other stuff, not just the premise, but also because Batman truly found his counterpart that day. And I think that that movie probably, out of any other movie or possibly any other show, truly showed what the Joker's potential was against that of Batman, which is truly to push him to his max limits physically, mentally, and spiritually. Batman and Joker, of course, are known as two characters that are pretty much mentally unbreakable. Batman with his moral code, and even Joker to a degree with his moral code. But when they met each other in that movie, they even had to change a little bit of their philosophies because they had met a character, they had met someone that they had never truly seen before. And it's pretty much, the same thing here. Just like what Heath Ledger's Joker said at the end of that movie, because they both were really surprised by one another's presence. As the Joker said, "You complete me" within that movie. Well, Naoya Inoue and Stephen Fulton, this is going to be exactly that. This is when an immovable object meets an unstoppable force, at least from what we see. What I do know is that so far within these guys' careers, this is pretty much going to be the Batman to the Joker, that type of matchup. I don't believe that either one of these fighters has really ever had that type of a fight within their career. And I also believe the same thing about Terrence Bud Crawford and Errol Spence Jr. And that's why these fights, in my view, they truly are going to be very fantastic to watch, because for the first time in all four of these fighters' careers, they're going to be pushed the most physically, they're going to be pushed the most mentally, pretty much in every aspect of their boxing game and within their boxing mind. And that's why this fight is truly fantastic. And of course, it's not getting anywhere near as much hype as the Terrence Bud Crawford versus Errol Spence Jr. fight, but in my view, it debatably could just be as good. Understandably, Terrence Bud Crawford and Errol Spence, they're on the higher level in terms of hype and in terms of promotion, and they've probably been around for longer. All that is understandable, and they've accomplished more. But this is going to be very interesting, because if Stephen Fulton ends up winning this fight, he is going to grace my top 10 pound for pound list, or at least certainly have a great debate there. And if Inoue wins this fight, especially if he dominates him, like a lot of what the Inoue fans are predicting, then he'll have to debatably be the best fighter in the world, or the number one pound for pound fighter in the world. Because a lot like Terrence Bud Crawford, he's done great and been very dominant within other weight divisions, but I just don't believe he has a lot of true A-grade talent on his resume. It just is what it is, but he has unified a division. He is a three-weight division champion, and now he's moving up to his fourth weight class. So if he is able to beat, in my view, an A-grade level fighter, and someone who's probably a little bit bigger than him, and that is Stephen Fulton, it would, of course, be the crowning achievement in his career. And if Stephen Fulton was able to beat a quote-unquote top 5 pound-for-pound fighter, in many people's opinions, that, of course, also would be a great achievement as well. I don't personally have Inoue in my top 5 pound-for-pound. I have him within my top 10 somewhere, but not quite top 5, because I just don't think he has the resume quite as of yet. But we'll see what happens. Anyways, this is going to be very interesting, because I promise you, whoever wins this fight or whoever loses this fight, these fighters are never going to be the same ever again. But the video is going to play about the fight review. I'm pretty much going to talk my ish when it comes down to it and give my fight prediction. Let's get straight into it.
July 25th is undoubtedly one of the biggest fights, if not the biggest fight in 2023 in boxing, with the monster against cool boy Steph. 122 pounds, unified championship of the world, two guys in their absolute prime.
Fulton and Inoue, they exemplify the way of the warrior. Not the keyboard warrior that's so popular nowadays, but these guys are calling each other out and making the fights happen. And when you talk about elite fighters, Naoya Inoue looking to become a 4-division champion, he doesn't go up to test the waters at 122. He says, who's the big dog there? Let me go get him.
Yes, and I have to give Mr. Naoya Inoue, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, and forgive me if I am pronouncing it somewhat wrong. I don't think that I'm really ever going to get it right until I hear him himself probably say it a multitude of times, because I've been told about 25 separate ways on how to pronounce his name correctly. So, once again, forgive me if I'm pronouncing it somewhat wrong. But anyways, Mr. Inoue is a very decent fighter. When it comes down to this is going to be a very particularly interesting fight. But once again, for those of you that have watched my videos in the past, and for those of you that have seen the quote-unquote new media agenda, and keep in mind that the new media agenda, they're not the only agenda that I like to review. A lot of people believe that I only review the new media agenda. I don't. They're just the ones that I review the most because I think that they like to spread the most bullshit, or the most hypocrisy, possibly out of any other media platform. But it is what it is. Remember when they said with Canelo Alvarez about potentially fighting Jamal Charlo or Gennady Golovkin or some of these other fighters that, oh, he's fighting a guy that had never fought at that weight class before. I wonder if Mr. Inoue is also going to get the same excuse if he loses this fight, because Inoue has never fought at this weight division before, and he's clearly fighting the best fighter there. So once again, is he going to get that same excuse as what a Jamal Charlo or Demetrius Andrade or one of these other fighters was going to fight? Highly doubt it.
来たらスーパーバンタム級に上げたとして調整試合はいらないかなっていうのは率直に思ったんですよ。
What makes this fight compelling with both guys is they're both undefeated. You got one former undisputed champion in Inoue who's coming up in weight, challenging himself again, explosive, doesn't know how to lose. And then you have a fighter like Stephen Fulton from West Philly who not only brings that Philly toughness, but he's a great boxer. And these guys...
I think that they're truly both great boxers. Of course, if you're a part of the new media side, when it comes down to it, pretty much the pro-black cult, it is what it is. Certain people don't like it when I call them that, but I mean, that's pretty much the name that fits them the best. They're, of course, going to try and, promote you this shit about Inoue. He's a very one-dimensional fighter and that he's not that skilled, blah, blah, blah. Inoue is a very skilled fighter, but he does have certain faults. Stephen Fulton, of course, has certain faults as well. Point is that they're both pretty complete fighters at the end of the day. But I think that if you're Naoya Inoue, I think if you're Inoue, that you probably want to keep this fight in the mid-range as most as possible. Either that or try and bully Stephen Fulton up against the ropes, because at times Stephen Fulton, he will go a little bit into a shell. And he can fight on the inside. He can fight on the inside very well, but when the fighter actually pressures him successfully, Inoue will be able to get off certain exchanges. And I will say this, Inoue has monstrous power. And I understand that Stephen Fulton, that, it's possible that he might be more adjusted to Inoue's power level than vice versa, just because he fought that decently big opponent for 126, I believe, in Brandon Figueroa. And some people, of course, will say, well, Figueroa doesn't have the skill set of a Naoya Inoue, and all that's understandable, but sometimes it's easier to face a guy that's actually trying to outbox you than a guy that's pretty much just coming for your head the whole entire time. Sometimes it's easier to face, say a Kell Brooks style if you know you're more skilled than them than that of a Sean Porter. Because Sean Porter, yeah, he might only have one objective, but basically his objective is pretty much like that of a junkyard dog. He's going to come at you, he's going to come at you hard, and he's basically going to try to rip you to pieces. And once again, yeah, you know what his game plan is, but it's going to be very hard to fight back against that because he's very athletic, he's very big, he's very powerful. Not necessarily with Sean Porter, but Figueroa for that weight class. So the fact that Fulton was able to get past him, in my view, probably around 8 rounds to 4 or 7 rounds to 5, it proved that, he had a little bit of fortitude, both mentally and physically, and a pretty good all-around game. As for Inoue, he does, in my view, still have the power advantage in this fight. So Fulton is going to have to be careful here. He does have a little bit of a problem at times, not returning his hands to his face, and Inoue also has that problem as well. So both fighters are going to have to utilize that. If you're Inoue, in my view, and Fulton, you're really going to have to utilize your feet. Inoue can fight on the outside as well. But the thing I don't like about Inoue, the biggest weakness that I see with him at times is that he can get hit with that right cross. He has this pull counter hook that he likes to use with the jab, and then he likes to set up the left hook, I believe. And it works, but a lot of the times he also does not move back enough or laterally enough to the point to where he's able to get out of range and avoid the right cross straight down the pipe. So he's going to have to watch out for that punch because that's one of Stephen Fulton's best combinations. His good 1-2, the good jab and right cross, and sometimes even coming back with a swivel jab.
Guys have no problem matching against each other, and that's rare air in this day and age.
Going out to Japan.
And if you're Stephen Fulton, in my view, you want this fight either in the outer range where you also have to use lateral movement and you want to try to get Inoue in his high guard, or you want him really close on the inside to where Stephen Fulton might even have the slight advantage. And yes, Inoue clearly has more power than Stephen Fulton, even for his size, I believe. But at the end of the day, Stephen Fulton, I think he's going to have a little bit more power, especially probably being the slightly bigger man than what most people think, at least what most Inoue fans think, in my view. And he's very decently skilled on the inside. He's shown that. Where he's the weakest probably is the mid-range. And even there, he's still very good. It's just that Inoue is exceptional in the mid-range. So if this stays in the mid-range the whole entire time, I'm not saying that Fulton can't win it. But in my view, he's going to, also want to utilize the inside game and also that of the outside game. But, if you're Fulton, once again, you want Inoue, probably, kind of chasing you within the high guard. You want to use that lateral movement. You want him chasing you. Or you want to be on the inside, kind of pushing up against him, kind of like what Fury did against Wilder within those fights. So within the multitude of dimensions that can happen here, Inoue is probably either going to want to try and beat Fulton up against the ropes, especially with great body work, while he tries to take advantage of it. With Fulton sometimes leaning back up against the ropes without throwing anything for too long, even though, of course, Fulton can throw up against the ropes when he has to, and throw on the back foot. He's very good at that when he has to be, although at times his hands are down a little bit too long. But when it comes down to, Inoue either wants to fight there or in the mid-range while he tries to utilize very quick feet and that very good jab. If you're Fulton, you want to try to bait Naoya Inoue with that right hand with the good 1-2 and at times the good 1-2-3 with that swivel jab. Just be careful that you don't lunge too far in because Inoue can potentially catch you with something. He's very quick. He might be potentially quicker than Stephen Fulton with his hands. So he's going to have to be very careful. Or once again, if you're on the inside, if you're tying him up, try to frustrate him because Inoue at times has shown a little bit of vulnerability on the inside. He can be bullied just a little bit.
Living up to the moment and defeating him in his country, that's major.
そうですね。4団体を統一して、その4団体を持って。
Now, right there, once again, that's where Stephen Fulton does not want the fight to be. If he shows that he is afraid of Inoue's power very early on, if Inoue is able to get a knockdown or two early on in the fight, or if he's able to show Fulton that I'm able to hit you quite cleanly and with a certain amount of shots that you've not been hit with before, if he hits Stephen Fulton cleanly within the first 4 rounds of the fight, and if he's able to win a couple of those rounds and he shows Fulton that I'm adjusting to your game plan this early on, Inoue more than likely is probably either going to get a stoppage later on or he's going to win by unanimous decision. But I predict that Stephen Fulton more than likely will have a little bit more nuance to his game to where that won't happen. But once again, you never know because power, of course, as Mike Tyson would always say, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face.
どこかこう防衛をしていけば、多分本当に4団体のチャンピオンになったんだ。
And if you're Stephen Fulton, boy, watch out for that left liver shot that Inoue carries because, oof, that shit smarts.
っていう実感があると思うんですけど、ただもうすぐそのフルトンとやるっていう話もありましたし、気持ちはもう前に向いてましたね。ここからはもう本当に挑戦だなと。 まあ実質5階級目ですから、自分のその骨格枠を超えた戦いになってくると思うんで、まあ自分でもどうなるかわからないですし、まあ周りがそう簡単にスーパーバンタムフェザーって言ってるほど自分は甘く見てないし、まあそういうまあ人たち、まあ期待に応えてるのはありますけど、まあ自分はすごく慎重に。
You know, let me also comment on this really quickly. I made a video, I believe, a couple of days ago about Mr. Jerron Boots Ennis, who I believe very well, in terms of talent, could be top 10 pound for pound just in terms of talent. But I made a video commenting on one of Champside's videos the other day, and I had certain people saying that, oh, well, why are you commenting about his opinion? That's weird and all this sort of stuff. Well, the reason why I do it, once again, is to usually expose certain narratives. And, you know, a lot of people said, well, why do you have such a problem with Jerron Boots Ennis being up there? That's just his opinion. And listen, everyone has the right to their opinion. That's great. But at the end of the day, if you have a guy that has never won an official belt, like Jerron Boots Ennis, and on top of that, he's never even close to defeated a legitimate A-grade level fighter, how can you truly call that fighter a top 10 pound per pound fighter? And certain people responded with, well, he hasn't just gotten his shot yet, and on top of that, you know, the pound for pound list is just purely based off of skill. No, actually, the pound for pound list is not purely based off of skill. Not only is it based off of skill and dominance, but it's also based on that of how many belts you win within how many weight divisions and your quote unquote resume. And once again, if we are going to go off of this, well, it's everybody's opinion, and you know, who cares if Jerron Boots Ennis is in the top 10 pound for pound? You know, he debatably has a spot to be there. I wouldn't agree with your standards personally, because I'm a person of results. But if you want to go by those standards, no problem. But then when Lomachenko was ranked, when Teddy Atlas said that Lomachenko was the number one pound for pound fighter when he was 9-1, when it came down to it, then why were these same channels having such an issue with it? You know, these guys have such a problem with Inoue or Lomachenko or some other fighter that's, you know, let's be real, isn't a black fighter, that they don't like when it comes down to it. You know, them being quote unquote debated as the number one pound for pound fighter. Oh, look, they're trying to push this guy and all that other stuff. Well, you know, I thought it was just people's opinions. That's why we can't go by those standards. We have to go by results. We have to go by belts won. We have to go by resume, and then we have to go by skills and dominance. I don't care how talented you are. You cannot be on a real pound for pound list just off of potential. Can't happen. You know, and you know the reason for that. Once again, because like I said earlier in the video, you never know what is truly going to happen until that Batman figure finally meets his Joker, or until Superman meets his Lex Luthor. A lot of people thought that Mike Tyson was going to beat Evander Holyfield. Evander Holyfield ended up whooping up on Mike Tyson. You know, a lot of people thought Deontay Wilder was going to knock Tyson Fury out. Tyson Fury eventually turned it around on him 3 times. You know, Adrian Broner. A lot of people thought Broner was going to beat Marcos Maidana. They thought he was the next Floyd Mayweather Jr. Then eventually later on, it was figured out he wasn't that guy. Zab Judah, the same thing. In NBA basketball, you know, people were starting to put Anthony Davis over actual championship caliber players like Kevin Durant and Stephen Curry, until it was later on figured out that not only, you know, could he barely make the playoffs when it came down to it, he only made it out of the second round once, or excuse me, the first round once, and he only made the playoffs like 2 times total in his career within a several year period with the New Orleans Pelicans. But he could never even win a championship or an MVP without being there with LeBron James, and he never won an MVP. But a lot of people thought that Anthony Davis would eventually translate to being the best within the whole entire NBA scene. The point is this: you can never have someone on your pound for pound list or within your top 10 within that sport in the world just off of pure potential. And Jerron Boots Ennis has nothing else right now but potential. That's the problem with that list. You know, it just is what it is. That's the problem that I personally have with it, because what that tells me is that I can't take your list seriously. If Jerron Boots Ennis is on your list, no problem. But then you should have had no problem with Lomachenko being ranked over Devin Haney on the pound for pound list. All of a sudden, you shouldn't be complaining about that. You shouldn't be complaining about the people who said that Tyson Fury could potentially beat Muhammad Ali. Because if we're going off of pure potential, Tyson Fury potentially certainly could have beat Muhammad Ali or George Foreman or Joe Frazier, or Lennox Lewis. He certainly could have beat any of those guys. He has the most all-around complete game of any heavyweight today. He's 6'9" with an 85-inch arm reach. Of course he could. Great stamina, great speed, decent strength. When it comes down to it, excellent boxing IQ. So all of a sudden, we have to accept that opinion, or at least, you can't complain about that. In NFL football, because of he just doesn't get his shot, when it comes down to it. Aaron Rodgers all of a sudden has to debatably be over Tom Brady because, he never had Bill Belichick. So he never got his shot, even whether you agree with that or don't agree with that. At the end of the day, that's how we have to look at it with a lot of these other guys. And in a way, he didn't get his shot over Chocolatito or Juan Francisco Estrada, two former pound-for-pound fighters that didn't seem interested in fighting him. So how come Inoue is not on your top 10 pound-for-pound list, off of potential, and he actually has belts within his career, but Jaron Boots Ennis is on there with full-on potential. Like I said, all these guys they're pretty much the pro-black cult of boxing. It is what it is. And I know a lot of people are going to be offended by that. It just is what it is. But that's why I cannot have a fighter, even as gracefully talented as what he is, I cannot have you on my top 10 pound-for-pound list without a belt. Even if Jaron Boots Ennis did win a belt in his next fight, he probably more than likely still would not be on my pound-for-pound list unless he's beating someone like Spencer Crawford, period.
Treat me like God, I'm the one like the sun. I know how to win, cause I've been the one. I'm the one, I'm the one. I've been the one, I've been the one. I've been the one, see, they been the two. If you been with me, I think that you lose. He's in the room, he was soon. And when I win, they gon' lose.
There's not that many great boxers that come from West Philadelphia. If I'm not mistaken, there was only one other world champion that was from West Philadelphia, and that was Julian Williams, J-Rock. And
yes, and we all see how he turned out. No offense against Julian J-Rock Williams, and this is actually a great segue to also respond to some of the comments of the Jaron Boots Ennis conversation, because a lot of people always ask me about Mr. Jamel Charlo. Like, I had one people say, well, what about Lomachenko? Lomachenko lost to Orlando Salido, blah, 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 right? But he lost to Orlando Salido when it was the second professional fight of his career. It's not like Orlando Salido was someone who was like 10-9. Orlando Salido was a former champion and had fought repeated A-grade level fighters, and Lomachenko was a dude that was just getting into the professional boxing scene. So once again, let's put a little bit of context behind it, and once again, if you want to go by the standards of, well, it's everyone's opinion and, potential, then all of a sudden you can't have a problem when people rank Lomachenko within their top 10 pound per pound, or another fighter, no matter what their demographic is, in the top 10 pound per pound, or Inoue as the number 1 pound per pound, based off of what they think their potential is. Because you're doing the same thing if you put Jaron Boots Ennis within the top 10 pound per pound. You can't disagree with their, potential list if you're also putting out a potential list. Once again, that's why anyone who's logical, you have to actually put out a list with actual results. That's how we have to rank things. Not off of hypotheticals or shoulda, coulda, wouldas, or, if he would have got his shot. Because if we're talking about, if he would have got his shot, I can talk all this shit about how Edwin Valario, that one Colombian fighter, I think he would have potentially beat Manny Pacquiao. So I'm going to say that more than likely he's better than Manny Pacquiao. I can't say that. It is what it is. At the end of the day, the results are the results. But like I said, when it comes down to it, Stephen Fulton, very decent fighter. We're going to see, how he reacts to this. But once again, with Jamel Charlo, when it comes down to it, the reason why he's certainly not within my top 5 pound per pound, maybe within my top 10, is because, first of all, that's not a division that is severely talented. In certain parts of the LDBC and new media, they'll be like, oh, what are you talking about? You got all these fighters there. All the fighters that are pretty much there ever since Jamel Charlo's reign have usually suffered several losses by now, or they were never A-grade fighters in the first place. Other than Brian Castano, who else is really there? And when I reviewed a video by Boxing Ego not too long ago, he was saying, "Oh, Lara and Canelo and Andre," like, right, but were those fighters really there when Jamel Charlo really took over? Like, let's stop. The fighters that were there were Jarrett Hurd, J. Rock Williams, and those guys were pretty much already eliminated as strengths once Jamel Charlo took over. So you pretty much had Brian Gastano, Tony Harrison, and Tim Tszyu. Are those guys really true A-class fighters? I mean, you tell me. And on top of that, Jamel Charlo, when he lost to Tony Harrison, that was when he was at the best point in his career. He was 30-something and 0. And he was the champion. He was very favored in that fight. And Tony Harrison was a guy that had been knocked out 2 or 3 times previously. And in both championship level fights that he was in, he was knocked out both times. That's why Jamel Charlo does not grace my top 5 pound-for-pound list. Because in my view, it's just absurd. You cannot have a fighter that is that limited in terms of his skill set, compared to other real A-plus level fighters within the top 10 pound-for-pound list, like Crawford or Canelo or Spence or Fury or Usyk when it comes down to it, or even a couple of other fighters, and he loses to a fighter that was known for getting knocked out and never winning a belt previously, and you're telling me he's top 5 pound per pound. But these were the same guys that were saying, wait a minute, Lomachenko can't be top 10 pound per pound. He can't be top 5 pound per pound. He can't be the number 1 guy because he lost to Salido. Right, but Jamel Charlo was number 1 pound per pound by losing to Tony Harrison. So, once again, I don't mind the quote-unquote standards, but then please tell me how that makes sense.
It has been too. So it means a lot. A lot of kids from West Philadelphia, it gives those other kids hope.
Stephen Fulton, to me, is excellent because he's a multi-dimensional offensive fighter. He has great weapons.
I agree, he is, and both fighters are a multi-dimensional offensive. Both of them are multi-dimensional in a multitude of ways, both defensively and offensively. That's why this fight's going to be very interesting.
He has great technique. He can sit there and do the basic technical stuff very, very well. He can sit there and utilize his jab if he wants. He can be a 1-2, a 1-1-2 kind of fighter. But he can also put forth...
I will say this, Fulton's going to have to be careful with some of those looping punches. And I think more than likely he's going to be able to get away with some of them. But if Inoue decides to, get in there, and if Fulton does not move his feet, if he does not move out and plans to try and throw another punch, and if Inoue is able to quickly get in a good left, or if he's quickly able to get in a punch by blocking quickly with the high guard and then quickly catching him, Stephen Fulton could touch the canvas. So he's going to have to be very careful. Inoue is very quick. He's very accurate. Once again, I'm not quite sure how accurate he's going to be in this fight because he's never fought a fighter like Fulton, and understandably vice versa. But it's going to be very interesting.
Extraordinary combinations that can determine a fight.
The West Philly flavor that Stephen Fulton brings is something that Inoue probably hasn't seen, and I want to see how he fares against a guy who can put that good jab, that footwork.
I agree. It is a type of style that he hasn't seen. Inoue more than likely is a fighter that Stephen Fulton hasn't seen as well. But it's going to be very interesting.
Feints. That's not really something that I've seen Inoue deal with.
When you're the underdog, you're like overlooked or underlooked, however you want to put it. I've seen and heard a lot of things that people were saying about the power, or he may not have the chin, or this person, or anyways is this and he's that, and it's like, I like that. I like those type of comments. That made me like, all right, they don't believe in me. Well, let's make them believers.
Now Fulton again. Some short chopping shots. Fulton with a big uppercut.
But anyways, that's pretty much about it for this video. I'm probably going to explain a little bit more for 5 minutes. But as Fulton, as he explained in that little last part, people talking about the power and the chin. I'll say this about both of those categories. I'm not really worried about Fulton's power. Inoue is not a natural 126-pounder, or wherever this fight is happening, it's going to be his first fight there. And even though I'm not using that as a major excuse, because if you're allegedly a guy that's supposed to be within that top 5 pound-per-pound realm, you're supposed to beat this guy at the end of the day, because Stephen Fulton, I'm not even sure if he has 20 fights on his record, but I could be wrong about that. Someone correct me. If he does, I think it's just over 20 fights. And at the end of the day, Inoue is debatably supposed to be, in many people's minds, the number 1 pound-for-pound fighter. So in my view, that's not that much of an excuse, because the size difference is not that crucial. But also talking about certain factors, it will be a little bit of a factor, because Stephen Fulton is going to have a 3-inch reach advantage, and I think like a 1-inch height advantage. But I'm not really worried about the power. I think Fulton, if he had enough power to kind of keep Brandon Figueroa off him a little bit, more than likely he's going to be okay with Inoue. But the power is going to be very monstrous coming from Inoue. He's a very powerful puncher. And like I said, if Fulton does not keep his hands up, and if he stays in that range for too long within his punching range, it's very possible that he could get knocked out or knocked down in any second. He has to be very careful. When it comes down to it, Inoue is a very extraordinary puncher, very extraordinary. He has monstrous power. I have to watch out for the left hook and the right hand. Undoubtedly, Inoue is also very quick. I think that if you're Mr. Inoue, that you have to use your feet to the best as possible. Utilize the high guard if you get really close to him up against the ropes. Go to the body quite a bit if you're both either Fulton or Inoue. Mix it up, of course, to the head, to the body. If you're Inoue, you have to be very careful. And the one thing that I don't like about Inoue, once again, is that his head at times doesn't move off the center line quite as good as what it should, especially when he's setting up fighters for that jab, and pull left hook counter. And, it's at times it can work, but a lot of the times he also can get hit with the right hand. And this is a fighter, once again, to where he is going to feel his right hands. I don't care about any of the rumors of, Fulton doesn't have any power and all this other stuff. Inoue is going to feel those punches if he gets hit flush. It is what it is. So he has to be careful because his head a lot of the times does not move off the center line. So he's going to have to utilize his feet. And if you're Inoue, once again, you want this fight either completely in the mid-range with you using lateral movement or superior foot movement, or you want this fight up against the ropes where you're bullying him. If you're Stephen Fulton, you want to try to box him from the outside. You want to try to get Inoue to fall within your 1-2 counter. Try to get him to utilize the high guard and try to take advantage of it by getting certain shots around the guard up top and to the body. Try to utilize your superior feet as well if you have them. The feet is also going to be very interesting within this fight as well because we're going to see who has the quicker and who has the better feet. And they both, in my view, have pretty good feet, but it's going to be interesting to see who is a little bit quicker because I can't really tell until they really get in the ring with each other. It's going to be interesting. But if you're Fulton, in my view, you either want this fight up close as well, or you want to the point to where you're on the back foot and you're making Inoue run into your shots. That's the type of range that you want for this fight. Kind of the Tyson Fury approach against that of Deontay Wilder. Even though, of course, Fury, a lot of the times, he was also able to hit Deontay Wilder cleanly, pretty much from every range. Mid-range, long range, and close range. But that's the area where Fulton wants it, in my view. But both fighters are going to have to be careful. Inoue, in my view, he's going to have to move his head off the center line or especially utilize his feet. Fulton's going to have to keep his hands up a little bit. And if Inoue does try to bully you up against the ropes, try to tie him up and try to frustrate him. He does appear to be the little bit of a better fighter on the inside, with throwing certain exchanges and more than likely take a, page out of Andre Ward's book or Mayweather's book, trying to frustrate your opponent on the inside with that clinch. When it comes down to it. So once again, it's going to be very interesting. Very interesting. Now, who am I predicting to win the fight? I'm more than likely going to go with that of Stephen Fulton by that of either unanimous or majority decision. Now, this fight is in that of Japan, so I would not be surprised if Mr. Inoue did end up winning by that either of split or unanimous decision. We'll see. But at the end of the day, I predict, just in my view, that Fulton is probably either going to win it 7 rounds to 5 or 8 rounds to 4. But if Inoue does end up getting a stoppage, or if he ends up winning this fight by unanimous decision, I wouldn't be surprised either. So let's see what happens. But let me also say this as an ending note. Either one of these fighters could potentially get the knockout or win by unanimous decision, in my view. Just in my personal view. Would not be surprised. But I am going to go with Stephen Fulton by that of unanimous decision. I'm going to predict 8 rounds to 4. Just because I like his head movement a little bit better. He is the bigger fighter, just ever so slightly. And on top of that, they're pretty evenly matched in my view. But Fulton, I think he's going to be better adjusted. I think that the inside game is going to give Inoue a little bit of trouble. I don't think that Fulton is going to allow Inoue's mid-range game to dictate the fight. I think he's going to try and make Inoue run into certain shots. And then when he does try to bully him on the inside, I think that, he might potentially defend a little bit better than Inoue. But let's see, because Inoue doesn't have a bad defense either. And on top of that, he's going to try to tie him up. And I want to see how Inoue reacts to that. So we'll see. But anyways, I predict Fulton 8 rounds to 4. Wouldn't be surprised either way the fight went. It truly is a great fight. Of course, I have a couple of other fights to predict later on in the week. but this is pretty much the first fight out of the way. But anyways, let's hope that this fight happens, because every single time that I do a fight prediction, a straight week out, the fight somehow always ends up getting canceled. But anyways, let's see over what ends up happening. Anyways, may the best man win. Let's see what happens. I have Stephen Fulton by that of decision. We'll see what happens. That's pretty much about it. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll talk to you all later.